Hello everyone, my name is Owen, and today I want to do something a little bit different. So I wanted to explain to you what I'm trying to do with this video and maybe get you guys on board, hopefully. So I'm currently rereading The Stand. It is my favorite book of all time, and I know I said I would wait till the start of 2023 to reread it again, but I just couldn't. And what I wanted to do, instead of just rereading it for my own pleasure, I wanted to do a super in-depth review analysis of this book and why I like it so much. This is the uncut version that came out in 1990, and I just love it so much. So here's the plan, essentially. I'm going to read this book, obviously, and I want to do little check-ins throughout my process. So like 5 chapters at a time, I'm going to make a video checking in and breaking down what happens in those chapters, and also like what happens that I think it's just fantastic and genius by Stephen King. So there's a couple ways we could do this. If you're interested in reading the book alongside me, you could do that. As I said, I'm going to read it 5 chapters at a time. So this video will be chapters 1 and like the prologue all the way to the end of chapter 5. So if you want to read along, we could do this journey together. Or you could just read the whole book and then I could just watch the videos as they come out. Or if you already read the book, you can still do that. Or you don't have to read the book, and I'm still going to explain to you what Stephen King does in this book specifically that I think is genius. And maybe if you are a writer or you think writing is interesting and you want to hear my thoughts about what I think works about this book, you could do that as well. So there's a lot of ways to enjoy this, and I want to experiment a little bit more with this series. I guess it's a series of a little bit more editing, nothing crazy. I don't have a ton of time, nor am I good at editing, but I have a little intro that I posted as a short. I think it's kind of like atmospheric, like the horror vibe. And maybe when I read excerpts of the stuff that I like, I'll put it up on the screen and read it. But I don't know, just experiment what works, what doesn't work, because I'm a small channel. So I don't know, man. This is the time to do something weird. But we'll see how it goes. So this video, chapters 1 through 5, it's like a read-along review, writing analysis. It's all the things mixed up. And if you guys have tips for me, I don't know what I'm doing. So I just make it up as I go. But this is what this is. I hope you guys stick around and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Ooh, spooky. Yeah, so we're going to jump right into it. This is The Stand, chapters 1 through 5. The chapter I've called The Heroes, because this is the, obviously, introduction to the book. And I don't know, admittedly, what the differences are between the uncut version and the normal original version, as I've not read the original version, so I only know the story from the uncut version. So I know a lot is added. He says as much in the prologue. Stephen King put a prologue that you read before you buy the book and a prologue you read after you buy the book, just explaining what you're getting into, essentially, which the fact that the author has to warn you about what's going to happen means that you're in for a ride, for sure. But this book starts off with just a little quick summary about basically the catalyst of this entire story, the government facility. One man, a military employee, escapes the facility as the disease is released. He gets out when he's not supposed to, and immediately the tone is set. He's just a scared guy trying to protect his family, and he causes catastrophe. But you can't help but just not blame him, because he escaped death, and his first instinct was to save his family. His wife is scared, his child is scared, and they're escaping. And obviously it causes this massive deadly pandemic that kills 99.4% of the population. But I like how Stephen King starts with, it all started from an act of love and an act of family, and that makes it all the more tragic. So that's the very, very beginning. And then immediately we start being introduced to or at least some of our main characters in this first 60 pages or so in the first 5 chapters. So the first character we have is Stuart Redman at the gas station where the military guy, is found dead, and his family has been killed by this disease. And the thing I really like about Stu's introduction is that he almost blends into the background. Just reading these first couple chapters, you would not assume that he is the main character, other than just small hints that he's not being affected by the disease as much as his friends around him. And I think that's really one of the great points of Stephen King's writing when he introduces each of these characters, or even just the POV characters in general. His writing style completely shifts into their perspective or to their personality. So for the chapters with Stu's point of view, there are a couple paragraphs about his background, and I'm going to share one of those, which I think like perfectly encapsulates his character, at least at the start of the novel. But because of Stu's character, where he's kind of like more reserved, he's put together. There's not like monologues, there's not internal dialogue with Stu, because like he's not simple, but he is a simple minded, not simple minded, I guess, but he's to the point, and he's like no bullshit. He's just Stu. And that's why he kind of like blends in, and like his backstory is short, and he has the shortest excerpt that I'm going to share today. Let's just get right into it. Stop beating around the bush.
The marriage had been the best time, and it had only lasted 18 months. The womb of his young wife had borne a single dark and malignant child. That had been 4 years ago. Since, he had thought of leaving Arnett, searching for something better, but small-town inertia held him, the low siren song of familiar places and familiar faces. He was well liked in Arnett, and Vic Palfrey had once paid him the ultimate compliment of calling him old-time tough.
Yeah, so what I like about that paragraph is it's straight and to the point. You get in that paragraph that he's experienced loss, and you know from the previous pages earlier that he got stuck in this small town to help his mom, and his brother left, and his mom still died, and he's just a man who a lot of bad things have happened to, but it's not like infecting his brain and turning him into an angry person. It's just the way of life, and he accepts that, which really shows like his depth of, I was going to say honor, but it's not honor. It's more like just strength of his character, that it's not all these bad things, and his wife dying, and his child passing away as well. It's just these horrible things, and it's just a matter of fact, like it happened, and I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to stay in this small town even though I know I shouldn't. And I really like that that introduction to his character, and he is one of my favorite characters. Moving on to the next hero that we meet, the next chapter is the introduction to Fran. And my first two rereads, I always say I loved Fran, but on this reread, her introduction was my favorite introduction, just because immediately when you meet her, she's pregnant, and she has to tell the man that she hooked up with that she is now pregnant, and whether or not they want to get married and keep the kid and all that stuff. But when you introduce to her, she's thinking of herself as the main character from the Scarlet Letter. So she's like calling Jess, like her boyfriend, like hookup, like comparing him to like the pastor in the Scarlet Letter, and like literizing like her own her own life and her own story, but also like making it. It's not like, oh, she just loves books. Like, it's like ironic, and she knows it's ironic, and her character is so witty and so sarcastic, but in like a fun and intelligent way. So that's shown a little bit in this paragraph, or the excerpt that I found, where she's running through her options with her boyfriend, Jess, which I think perfectly encapsulates her character. So this is that.
He struck a light, and for just a moment, as cigarette smoke wrapped it up, she clearly saw a man and a boy fighting for control of the same face. "Oh, hell," he said. "The choices as I see them. We can get married and keep the baby. We can get married and give the baby up. Or we don't get married and I keep the baby. Or, Franny, or we don't get married and I don't keep the baby. Or I could get an abortion. Does that cover everything? Have I left anything out? Franny, can't we just..." "We are talking. You had your chance and you said, 'Oh, hell.' Your exact words. I just outlined all the possible choices. Of course, I've had a little more time to work up an agenda." "You want a cigarette?" "No, they're bad for the baby." "Franny, god damn it! Why are you shouting?" "Because you seem so determined to aggravate me as much as you can," Jess said hotly. He controlled himself. "I'm sorry. I just can't think of this as my fault." "You can't." She looked at him with a cocked eyebrow. And behold, a virgin shall conceive. Do you have to be so goddamn flip? You had the pill, you said. I took you at your word. Was I so wrong? No, you weren't so wrong, but that doesn't change the fact.
One of the best ways to be introduced to a character is to see them under duress and see how they react, because that's when you truly understand like a person in real life or a character in a book. And I love that we're introduced to Fran in this very stressful, very intense scenario where she has like an unexpected pregnancy and she's so young and she knows like society and her parents are gonna like have a fit. And her reaction is fairly mature. Or no, it is mature and it's fairly level-headed, and she still has a way to like get a sense of humor even before this, like when earlier she like bites her tongue and starts bleeding and she's like can't stop laughing about it, and it's a laugh of like being able to separate herself, but also like a stress laugh because like everything is going to crap right now. And I really appreciate in this specific excerpt, she's running through her options with Jess. She wants to give him like as much like support as she can because she knows it's tough for him, but also she's not putting up with his immaturity because she knows that this is way more serious for her than it is for him, even though he's involved. So I just really like that in this scene, particularly when he says like, I can't see how it's my fault. She immediately calls him on his absolute crap, and she says, and basically says the extent of, well, I didn't do this by my own, right? So, and the virgin shall conceive. You know what I mean? It must have been all me then. And I just love that she's willing to have this conversation with him, and she's not putting up with any of his crap. And it just, I don't know. I just really like this introduction. I think it perfectly encapsulates like the strength of her character, like compared to like Stu, who's strong, gone through all this stuff, and like still like level-headed. Hers is, she's strong in the sense that she's not going to put up with anybody's crap, and she's going to do it in a way that's humorous, that's witty, that's snappy, and it's great. And I love her introduction, and her opening chapter is my favorite character introduction of the three I'm going to talk about today. That's not to say that this next one isn't also great. The third main character we meet is Larry Underwood, the newfound rock star. I don't know if it's a rock. I forget what the music genre is, but newfound fame. And man, when we meet Larry, he's a piece of crap. Let's hear it.
So you came back, Alice said, taking a used Brillo from the table talk pie dish and putting it to work in the skillet. What brought you? Well, Ma, this friend of mine clued me into the facts of life. The assholes travel in packs, and this time they were after me. I don't know if friend is the right word for him. He respects me musically about as much as I respect the 1910 Fruit Gum Company. But he got me to put on my traveling shoes, and wasn't it Robert Frost who said home is a place that when you go there they have to take you in? Aloud, he said, I guess I got to missing you, Mom. She snorted. That's why you wrote me so often? I'm not much of a letter writer. He pumped his cigarette slowly up and down. Smoke rings formed from the tip and drifted off. You can say that again. Smiling, he said, I'm not much of a letter writer. But you're still smart with your mother. That hasn't changed.
So I think this excerpt really showed what I was talking about earlier, where Stephen King takes the perspective of the character he's writing about and like really has it influence and completely change the writing style. So talking about Stu, it was like short and to the point, but so it shows his bluntness and his strength. And then Franny's was kind of very snippy, very like literary references and stuff like that, and very witty. But you could tell she's very put together in the way that she acts. Larry, on the other hand, is also very internal and very snippy, like very similar to Fran's, except it's tinted by this selfishness and this self-indulgence. So we get that whole backstory of like his hit, like reaching like really high in the charts, him gaining a lot of fame, and then how he immediately like starts to ruin his life by throwing this like huge party. He's losing a lot of money, and then you go through the story of like his friend calling him out on it, saying you need to stop, like you're wasting too much money, like you need to go back to New York, you got to see your family, like you got to get out of here. And even reading that story, it's very obvious that his friend who calls him out on this is in the right, and that Larry needs to stop this. However, you're being told this from the perspective of Larry, who cannot fathom that he's in the wrong, and he has such a bitter, like self-indulgent mentality. So what I really liked in this section, when his mom asks him why he's here, and he immediately goes in this internal monologue, which is kind of funny, a kind of like dry humor, where he goes like, basically summarizes in his head, and even in his internal monologue, he can't fathom the idea that his friend wanted to help him out of like the selflessness. He just only thinks about the respect and how he doesn't think this guy respects him because he doesn't like his music very much, and then how he's in the wrong, but like, is he though? Like, it's kind of like that attitude where he like admits like, yeah, maybe I did something wrong, but it's also like, you're not my friend anyway, so like, also it's not my fault. It's just kind of like this, it's not that he's not admitting his faults, but he's just doing it like in a half-assed way. And then he just responds like, oh, just missing you, mom. Like, in a kind of like, I don't know. Larry's personality is just a personality that I've run into in real life. It's just that personality of like charming, but also like charming in a way that like you could tell that person like doesn't actually respect you, in the way that they pay compliments to you, or the way they smile at you and like try to like disarm you with their like charm. But you could just tell like deep down, like they're just so in their own head, in their own world. And I think that's so true here. And like his mom is just like a rundown, like single mother, like her child is going down the drain. And you see that from her perspective, that she's really, really worried about him. So, and she just lived with him her whole life. So she's just not catching on to his like disarming charm, I guess. And I just really like this introduction. I think it's a perfect introduction to this character, and he's not very likable. But knowing how he goes, obviously he's one of our heroes. He's gonna come around, just you wait. But overall, I really liked this introduction. I think it's super strong, because the strongest thing I think about The Stand is these characters and how human and real they feel. All three of the characters we went through today, they all are people that if I haven't met in the real world, I could like piecemeal aspects of people that I do know and create these characters. They feel so real. And I think what I kept saying the multiple times is the way that King changes his perspectives in the way his writing style. So you truly immerse in almost, their personality infects almost every single part of the writing, not just the dialogue, but also the prose and the internal monologues and stuff like that. So even there's a section in the first 5 chapters where we take the perspective of one of the people in Stu's home Texas town, who's just all the worst things you could be as a human. He's racist, he's sexist, he borderline, or it implies that he abuses his kids and all that stuff. And you take his perspective, and just like everything is affected with that, like the prose, the dialogue, and everything else, that if you were just reading that on its own, you would think that this author has a serious problem, and it's very, very horrible words. And it just makes sense if you're entering that person's state of mind. You could really immediately see where they stand on everything, and you feel like you deeply understand them even when they're not talking or they're not even directly thinking. I think it's one of the strongest aspects of his character, and I think these first 5 chapters, not only do we get like the catalysts for the horror that's about to come, we meet some of the key players, and the tone is set, and now we're ready to get into the story itself. And so that's the first episode. That's the first 5 chapters. Let me know what you guys think about the series, what else you would want to know or for me to talk about, and also subscribe if you want to join the journey along. I'm going to be posting these videos every 5 chapters or so let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much.